Wow, this is quite a challenge you've given us today. We're going deep, really deep into a whole bunch of social ideas, and we're pulling from so many different sources.
Yeah, it's not just about understanding, individual concepts in isolation. It's more like gaining a new perspective, a new way of seeing the world, and our place in it, all the potential we have.
Absolutely. And what's so fascinating is this interconnectedness. We're not just looking at separate issues. It's like tracing threads that connect everything from, our personal spirituality all the way to the big picture global society.
Exactly. And with this really forward-looking perspective, it's full of possibilities and really, at its heart, incredibly optimistic about human progress.
Okay, so let's dive right in, starting with, well, what our sources call spirituality, the base of life. And this core idea is something else. It says that every single one of us, no matter our background or differences, we all come from the same ultimate source, a supreme progenitor.
Yeah.
It's like instantly, those barriers we put up, they just start to fade.
It's really interesting how this perspective changes our whole idea of unity. It's not just some nice goal. It's the very nature of reality. Division, in this view, is actually what's unnatural, a kind of cosmic dissonance,
Yeah.
It suggests that at our deepest level, we're drawn towards connection, and that overcoming separation is how we align with the very fabric of existence.
And building on that is this shared destination, right? Merging with the supreme being. It's like we're all on this journey together from the same starting point, ultimately going back to that same point. And with this common purpose, our sources suggest, well, it makes cooperation and mutual understanding not just nice to have, but almost essential, a logical outcome.
And this whole spiritual foundation, it's got this really intriguing psychological aspect. It's not about blind faith. It's about using our own ability to reason, to think things through, and ultimately recognize this cosmic truth. It's a path of understanding, where clear thinking leads us to see that supreme being as both where we come from and where we're going.
Here's where it gets really mind-bending, the idea of a cosmic ideal. This isn't just some abstract idea floating around. It's a force, a powerful force for unity. And it exists beyond all the relative differences that normally separate us. Things like cultural norms, borders, even our own egos. It's like the ultimate tool to break down those barriers of us and them.
Absolutely. Because this cosmic ideal, it transcends all those ever-changing relative things. It gives us a stable foundation for real unity. It's like a constant, a point of reference that we can always come back to guide us towards greater harmony, amidst all the change and all the different perspectives in the world.
And this idea of spirituality, it's not some far-off, airy-fairy concept. It's presented as a powerful, even if subtle force, the very foundation of a rational and effective philosophy. And that philosophy can help us address real problems, whether it's personal struggles, social inequalities, or even global conflicts.
And this leads to a really important progression, moving from those small, limited identities to a much broader, more encompassing universalism. Our sources argue that as our minds expand, as we gain wider perspectives, we naturally move beyond things like rigid caste systems, tribal loyalties, or strict nationalism, all those isms that have caused so much conflict throughout history.
Right. If we're stuck in this mine versus yours mentality, division is almost guaranteed. But when we embrace a universal perspective, when we see our shared humanity, those feelings of separation start to disappear. If everything is part of a bigger whole, there's nothing to defend mine from. Violence and hatred, well, they lose their foundation.
Building on this whole spiritual foundation, we now move to the realm of society and social unity. And there's this really beautiful analogy here. Society imagined as a group of pilgrims all on a journey together.
I love that image. Everyone supporting one another, sharing resources, helping those who stumble along the way. If someone's struggling, the community helps them up, helps them get back on track. It's a powerful image of shared responsibility and taking care of each other.
And it's not just about immediate support. It's also about expanding our mental horizons, breaking down those little walls of self-interest that so often separate us. Moving forward together towards common goals, it actually expands our individual consciousness.
So society here, it's defined as this dynamic collective, actively working towards social progress. It's about consciously trying to bridge the gap between our current state, with all the division, and this ideal of cosmic humanity. That expanded unity we talked about on a spiritual level, now manifesting in our social structures.
And a key point our sources make is the need to ensure that everyone in society feel like their life has real meaning, real purpose. Preventing feelings of worthlessness, well, it's a cornerstone of a healthy society. When people feel valued, connected, and like they're contributing, the whole collective benefits.
And here's a statement that really hits home. All of humanity is one people, bound by an inherent fraternity. Those who deny that, who try to distort or undermine that kinship, are identified as enemies of humanity. It's a powerful declaration of how interconnected we are.
It reinforces that core principle of unity from the spiritual perspective. Any attempt to break that natural fraternity is seen as harmful, damaging to the very essence of what it means to be human.
Our sources then go on to say that the worth of everything we value, things like cultural achievements, the progress of civilization, acts of service, even our spiritual efforts, it all depends on establishing this magnificent, healthy, universal human society. If that foundation isn't strong, well, nothing else can truly flourish.
And there's a clear warning about the dangers of disunity. Too much self-interest, forming rigid, exclusive groups, and a lack of understanding and empathy. These are all sources that can lead to decline, even the lapse of societies. History's full of those cautionary tales.
Which brings us to the discussion of nationalism and universalism. Right from the start, there's this argument that the age of strict nationalism is becoming obsolete.
What's interesting is the reasoning. It's not just a moral argument, though that's there.
Yeah.
It's practical, too. The world wars, the increasing blending of cultures in the modern world, these are signs that those rigid nationalistic ideas just don't work anymore. There's this rise of a more global consciousness, a powerful trend.
And the solution they propose is pretty bold. A common constitution and a true world government. It's a big vision of unity on a political level.
And it's not just symbolic. They suggest things like a single world military to prevent wars and creating units, not necessarily based on old national borders, to tackle global issues like education, food security, and the environment. The idea is to have centralized cooperative solutions for problems that affect everyone.
With all the advancements in communication, our world's getting smaller, more interconnected than ever. And the sources argue that if we cling to nationalistic feelings, it'll only lead to more friction and conflict. The real benefit for any nation, they say, comes from dedicating ourselves to the well-being of the entire human race.
Bringing us back to that idea of universalism, they propose adopting one unifying cosmic ideology, with the Supreme Father as the common goal, the ultimate way to unite humanity into a world nation, building that shared spiritual foundation that goes beyond all the things that divide us.
On a more practical level, there's a call for a global language, and they point to English as the most suitable option right now, given how widely it's used. But it's not about erasing local cultures. They stress how important local languages are for things like literature and preserving cultural identity. It's about balance, global communication, but also celebrating local uniqueness.
Here's a big one. Every atom in the universe belongs to all living beings. If we truly embrace this, the whole idea of exclusive ownership, any ideology of exclusion, it falls apart. It changes how we think about resources, belonging, our relationship to the cosmos.
And based on that, they say all people are world citizens from birth. The right to settle anywhere, to live a life with dignity and opportunity, that's an inalienable right. Denying that right, they say, makes any talk about peace just empty words.
And their vision goes beyond Earth. They talk about the right to live on other planets, even suggesting forceful establishment might be needed in the future. It's ambitious, thinking really big about humanity's future in the cosmos.
The sources highlight how, throughout history, humans have always been striving for unity, despite all the barriers. And now, those old divisions are crumbling. There's this newly awakened humanity that's longing for a truly universal society.
That temporary unity we see during wartime, it comes from a common enemy, a temporary goal. They contrast that with the lasting unity that can come from cosmic consciousness, like what's practiced in Ananda Marga.
And it's not just spiritual. Ananda Marga also has a core economic ideal, which is that all the Earth's resources, all property, should be shared equally. This is reinforced by a shloka they recite, emphasizing collective movement, thought, knowledge-sharing, aspirations, and ultimately unity with the Supreme.
That interconnectedness between individual well-being and the well-being of the entire cosmos, it's key. And they urge spiritual aspirants to work towards realizing this unity through effort, service, and spreading this ideology.
Here's an interesting thought. They say humanity has essentially just one culture. Those variations we see, traditions, customs, they're just variations, not fundamental differences that should divide us. And they warn against trying to erase those local expressions. They're valuable.
Instead, they focus on social synthesis. More contact, interaction, blending between cultures. It's like a bouquet, right? More beautiful when there are different flowers, unity and diversity together.
This section ends with a really inspiring statement. Striving forward together, with the whole universe as our context, towards realizing our divinity, That's our greatest task. A cosmic call to evolve together towards a shared destiny.
And addressing a huge source of division, they condemn racial superiority and any kind of racial injustice. Ananda Marga's principle is to completely disregard race, caste, or sect. Everyone's equal, socially, in jobs, even marriage. Humanity is one family.
They even call the caste system a hypocrisy, saying we all come from monkeys. It's a way of dismantling those hierarchies by pointing to our shared origins.
They emphasize how those basic human experiences, love, joy, pain, sorrow, those are universal, shared by all races. It's a reminder of that shared humanity underneath those superficial differences.
And those feelings of being different, whether it's religious, social, economic, anything, they're seen as obstacles to spiritual practice. If we see all beings as expressions of the same supreme consciousness, well, those categories don't mean anything.
People might have different virtues, wealth, knowledge, sure, but we're all human. And to grow, both individually and as a society, we have to eliminate those feelings of difference.
They end by noting how the world's becoming more and more interconnected. People from different continents are understanding each other better, even starting to recognize that underlying vibration of the one mind that connects us all.
Moving on to social wealth. Our sources present a radical idea. They say the whole world, all living beings, all resources, it's all one big family. And nature itself didn't create private property. That idea, they say, mostly comes from selfish individuals.
It really challenges the way we think about economics. They ask, how can extreme wealth be justified when so many people lack basic necessities? It's a moral question, a challenge to the way things are.
The desire to get rich by exploiting others, they call it a mental malady, a distortion that comes from the soul's unfulfilled hunger for something deeper. And this pursuit of wealth at the expense of others, it always leads to injustice, people being deprived of their basic rights.
They use this analogy, someone in a family hoarding all the food while others go hungry. It's a powerful way to show the harm caused by the wealthy, disregarding the limited resources we have and the needs of the community.
It's important to note, though, that even those who are driven by this greed, they're still part of the human family. The goal is to help them overcome this tendency, not to destroy them.
The real value of money, they remind us, is in how we use it. Hoarding wealth beyond what we need, it makes it meaningless and creates responsibility for the injustice others face.
And just to clarify, spiritual practice in Ananda Marga doesn't mean giving up all possessions. It's about using everything rightly, ethically, responsibly, being a good steward of resources.
They say we should enjoy mental and spiritual wealth freely. Those are limitless. But hoarding material resources, that's where the problem lies. They even suggest forceful intervention might be necessary to make sure everyone's basic needs are met. Both physical and mental cravings, they link them to a deeper mental hunger that can be addressed through education and a shift towards spiritual fulfillment.
And they emphasize the importance of guaranteeing those minimum essentials for everyone. Food, clothing, medical care, education, housing. It's crucial for creating a global family, allowing individuals to develop their full potential. And this requires a global effort with enough economic power to make it happen.
They recognize that we need diverse skills and talents, so there will be differences in what people receive. But the goal is to constantly work towards reducing the gap between those special provisions and the basic minimum everyone deserves.
This system allows for complete freedom in the spiritual and mental realms, because those are unlimited. One person's growth doesn't take away from another's. But the physical realm, that's limited. If some hoard too much, others will be deprived.
So individual freedom to accumulate wealth, it has to have limits. Otherwise, you end up with a permanent underclass and hinder the progress of humanity as a whole.
This leads to the social philosophy of Ananda Marga. They advocate for integrated personality development and world fraternity based on cosmic sentiment, a deep feeling of connection to all beings. And their economic model is Prout, the progressive utilization theory, aiming to use all resources, physical, mental, and spiritual, for the benefit of all.
The key is balance. Balancing our own inner spiritual journey with the practical adjustments we need to make in the world to create harmony, both within society and with nature.
They envision a future where humanity is united, a future that's more constructive and intelligently planned based on these universal ideals.
And they restate the ultimate goals, making sure everyone has their basic needs met, enabling everyone to develop their full potential, striving for absolute truth, and moving towards the absolute while still appreciating the world. It's about making humanity conscious of the purpose and meaning of life.
Now, focusing on exploitation, our sources say most of the problems in society aren't accidental. They're created by people who manipulate things for their own profit, creating artificial scarcity. And this pushes those who are deprived to desperate measures like crime just to survive.
It's a sharp analysis of how injustice is created and maintained. The poor are often forced to work for these exploiters, then penalized by the system when they're driven to crime. And the wealthy, they often escape any consequences. It's a cycle that traps people.
The wealthy, they misuse their power, forcing the poor into servitude, even pushing them towards immoral acts just to survive. And behind it all, there's often a bigger exploiter pulling the strings, manipulating everyone.
They point to the huge contrast between the rich and the beggars on the street as a sign of how messed up our values are. It's a stark visual reminder of inequality.
And they define exploitation much broader than just economics. It includes physical, social, even psychological exploitation. It happens when people are manipulated into feeling inferior or superior through dogma or social conditioning. It shapes how they see themselves and others.
Direct economic exploitation, like unfair wages, is easy to see, but they highlight those more subtle forms, socioeconomic and psychoeconomic exploitation. It's so insidious that people might not even realize they're being exploited, which makes it easier to control them.
And as people become more aware of economic exploitation, those in power are shifting to these more subtle methods to maintain control.
They use this image of a bird that's been caged its whole life. It's lost the ability to fly. That's what happens when education is distorted, when propaganda is used to control people's minds. They lose the ability to see their own potential, their own freedom.
They give the example of people who've been oppressed for so long that they resist opportunities to improve their lives. That's the lasting impact of those inferiority complexes instilled by exploiters.
But even while criticizing exploitation, they remind us that those who exploit are still human. So we need a compassionate approach, focusing on understanding and reform, not just punishment.
They outline 3 things we must do. First, develop strong personal morality and mental discipline. Second, unite with other moral individuals globally. And third, fight relentlessly against all forms of injustice.
They say that political and religious institutions alone can't solve this problem. We need action, a fight against immorality, not just talk.
They call for a flaming moral purpose to overcome greed, oppression, and exploitation. It's about igniting a passion for justice within ourselves and within society.
Now, looking at dialectic materialism and democracy, our sources argue that trying to create equality just through laws or force won't work. We need a change in people's hearts, based on moral and spiritual principles.
They criticize communism for suppressing individual expression, saying it goes against human nature and will inevitably lead to rebellion.
The real solution, they say, is love. Genuine love for humanity. It requires real empathy, not just theories or blind faith in leaders.
They question that saying, the world belongs to the toiling masses, arguing it ignores the contributions of intellectuals and other non-manual workers. The focus should be on meeting everyone's needs, regardless of their social group, with love and compassion.
They acknowledge that workers uniting against exploitation is natural, but they ask, should any single group, even the working class, be the dominant force? They believe that true progress requires a society where everyone has equal opportunities and rights.
And they say that only those who are moralistic and spiritualistic universalists, the sadvipras, can truly bring about positive change. They possess a cosmic goal and universal love, which is why the era of the sadvipra is so important.
Theories alone don't liberate us. True liberation comes from being open to all possibilities and integrating those ideals into our lives.
Public education is essential for democracy, but it's not enough to just teach people to read. They need to understand their place in the world, what they should strive for. True knowledge is key.
And morality is the second pillar of democracy. Without it, you get corruption, people selling their votes, and leaders who reflect that lack of morality.
Now, looking at politicians, the sources lay a lot of blame for suffering on bad leadership. Unintelligent or selfish leaders who manipulate people to gain power.
They say poverty and misery are the sins of the leaders. Leaders have a duty to guide society and prevent it from falling apart.
They warn those who seek power without preparing themselves and developing strong morals that they will fail and cause disaster.
Group politics, they say, is worse than a disease. It destroys positive qualities, valuing loyalty to a party over individual ability and integrity.
Many politicians, they say, are only focused on themselves, on getting more power. They'll deceive, manipulate, and create division to achieve their goals.
They even suggest that the biggest obstacle to world federation is the fear of local leaders losing their power, not true national interests.
And they talk about this shadow of immorality holding us back. It's why we need a strong moral force from outside politics, because governments, without that check, can become tyrannical.
Real progress can't come from just speeches. Politicians can't create sadvipras. That requires mental and spiritual training.
They criticize those who just talk without action, those who are more interested in attacking others than truly uplifting society.
Real change starts with each individual purifying themselves. It requires constant vigilance.
Especially in these times, honesty is absolutely crucial. If honesty disappears, civilization is doomed.
A truly benevolent society can't be built on selfishness or force. It requires genuine love and compassion for humanity.
And that leads to the idea of the sadvipras, those who dedicate themselves to achieving supreme bliss, who are strong in morality, and who actively fight against immorality.
They're always fighting against injustice, against anything that divides us. They're different from those who might appear righteous but don't have the courage to actually fight for what's right.
Sadvipras play a vital role in preventing exploitation. They see how it corrupts both the exploiter and the exploited, and they work to create a system where everyone has their needs met.
They're spiritual revolutionaries, working to uplift humanity in all aspects, physically, mentally, and spiritually. They understand that ensuring everyone has their basic needs met is crucial for preventing sin and creating a just society.
And you can recognize a sadvipra by their actions. They're selfless, dedicated to service, and they always uphold moral principles. They fight against exploitation, even if it's done in the name of religion, and they strive to unite everyone.
They call upon all moral people to come together and form a strong sadvipra society, dedicated to the good of all countries and the liberation of humanity.
And they're not passive. They'll even intervene physically if necessary to stop exploitation. They're willing to do whatever it takes to protect the vulnerable.
The sources say that the future will be guided by those with the right philosophy and spiritual practice, the sadvipras. They urge conscious people to take back power from those who are morally corrupt.
They predict that if governments don't embrace these ideals, there will be a revolution leading to the rule of the sadvipras.
For a sadvipra, human life is the most important thing, more important than any state, any scripture, anything. Everything should exist to help humanity develop, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
They question the purpose of institutions that hinder human well-being, saying humanity comes first.
And their actions are always based on honesty, not personal biases.
The sources encourage everyone to become sadvipras, to fight for a better world with the assurance that they will succeed.
But they warn against just talking about revolution. Real change requires discipline, training, character building, morality, all the qualities of a sadvipra.
Those who are dedicated to the supreme consciousness, they are the true heroes, those who can lead humanity out of darkness.
And the mission of a sadvipra is never-ending. They're always working to save humanity, because a true sadvipra society hasn't fully formed yet, which is why we see this cycle of exploitation and revolution.
Moving on to social justice, the sources advocate for a single legal code for all humanity. They say it's wrong to have different laws based on nationality or community because we all experience the same basic emotions.
Crimes are defined by laws, but virtue and vice are often based on tradition, which varies between cultures. What's considered a crime in one place might not be in another.
They say those working for world fraternity should aim to harmonize social customs, morals, and laws, creating a universal standard. Actions that benefit humanity are virtuous. Those that harm are vices.
They use the example of stealing out of hunger. We can see it externally as a crime, but we also need to understand the circumstances that led to it. Prout aims to prevent those situations where people are driven to crime out of desperation.
The solution is a global economic system that ensures everyone has their basic needs met. National leaders are responsible for poverty and injustice. They're the ones creating the conditions that lead to crime.
They identify three main causes of sin. First, a lack of resources, which leads to desperation and brutality. This explains why some systems can be so harsh.
Second, hoarding resources, which is a mental disease that leads to corruption and wickedness. This is where sadvipras are needed to ensure resources are used properly.
And third, the biggest cause of sin is stagnancy. Clinging to old ways of thinking, resisting progress. This requires strong action from sadvipras to break through those outdated beliefs.
They link crime to the lack of opportunities for honest living, forcing people into desperate acts. The legal system fails to address these root causes, leading to the destruction of families.
They emphasize how foolish isolationism is. We're all interconnected, every act has consequences, injustice anywhere harms everyone.
Now, on the penal code, they suggest we get rid of the term altogether. Punishment just creates resentment. We need corrective measures that focus on rehabilitation.
The basis for those measures should be human values, implemented in stages. First, persuasion with kindness, then firmer communication, then informing the offender of the consequences, and finally implementing those consequences humanely.
They're against the death penalty. It's a sign of failure, admitting we can't help people change. A civilized society should focus on rehabilitation.
Prisons that don't focus on rehabilitation are useless. They see criminals as people with mental and behavioral issues that can be addressed through spiritual practices and a supportive environment.
And they point out the flaws in the current legal system, where wealth and clever lawyers can distort justice, letting the guilty go free and punishing the innocent. It's a disgrace.
So a sadvipra-based system would focus on healing, not just punishment. Prisons would become rectification camps, offering treatment and focusing on meeting basic needs first.
The goal is to help everyone move forward together. Those who've strayed need help, not abandonment. Everyone has the potential for change, and sadvipras help unlock that potential.
Now let's discuss education. They say true knowledge is understanding our rights and responsibilities, and science is the application of that knowledge. This means everyone deserves equal opportunities for education.
Those in power often exploit ignorance to maintain control. They resist the spread of true knowledge and the fulfillment of people's needs.
The solution is to recognize the inherent value of every human being, regardless of their education level. Knowledge and science should be accessible to all.
Those who share their knowledge contribute to society, while those who hoard it are hindering progress. Sharing is essential for a healthy society.
Helping those who are less fortunate is a sign of a truly civilized society.
And when leaders despise others, it's often because they're insecure and ignorant themselves.
So many problems come from people treating each other badly.
Real education isn't just about good manners. It's about genuine compassion and concern for others.
A truly educated person learns, remembers, and applies their knowledge ethically, and their virtues are the true measure of their education.
True education leads to liberation from ignorance and injustice.
Morality, spirituality, humanism, and a balance of science and philosophy are the foundations of real education.
They advocate for free education for all, without government or religious interference. The only ism that's acceptable is universalism.
And teachers have a huge responsibility. They need to have strong character, be righteous, selfless, and inspiring.
They should see all their students, regardless of age, as children at different stages of development, requiring patience and understanding.
They also highlight the power of drama and film to educate and inspire.
And it's a tragedy when talented people are held back by lack of resources. We need to eliminate inequality so everyone can contribute to human progress.
Now let's talk about art and literature. The ideal for an artist, they say, is to transcend the physical world and connect with the spiritual realm. True artists see the spirit in everything and strive to realize the divine within.
The depth of their connection with the divine is reflected in their art. Those who lack that spiritual connection can't create truly great art.
Art and literature inspire people to connect with the cosmic mind. True artists reveal the underlying unity in the world.
A true writer is both a creator and a guide. Their work can have a huge impact on society, both good and bad.
That's why they say those who lack self-restraint shouldn't engage in art. They have a responsibility to use their talents wisely.
True literature, they say, is that which helps society move towards benevolence and fulfillment. It's not just art for art's sake, but art for service and blessedness.
Despite all the apparent divisions, humanity is one, and they hope to see more artists expressing that truth in their work.
Authors have a duty to make sure their work benefits society. They need to see the problems in the world and use their talents to inspire positive change.
They urge artists to be courageous, to stand up against injustice even if they face opposition. Every small act of resistance contributes to the ultimate victory.
Now let's discuss science. They emphasize that the use of anything, including scientific knowledge, depends on the context. We need to constantly adapt and progress, using science to unlock human potential.
Holding on to outdated tools isn't progress. We need to embrace new technologies while addressing the challenges they bring.
They reject the idea that science is inherently evil. It's a tool that can be used for good or bad.
But if science stays solely in the hands of materialists, it will lead to despair. We need moral and spiritual guidance to ensure science is used ethically.
They address the fear of overpopulation, saying that with a collective economic system, we can increase productivity and ensure everyone has enough.
They're optimistic about science. Even with threats like nuclear weapons, they believe humanity will find solutions and ultimately use science for good.
They acknowledge that Earth won't last forever, but they believe science will enable us to travel to other planets, ensuring the continuation of humanity.
Now, regarding industry, they advocate for decentralization. We need to develop all regions, not just concentrate industries in one place.
They recommend creating self-sufficient local units, combining agriculture and industry, to ensure resilience in times of crisis.
As transportation improves, these units can be connected, creating a more balanced and sustainable system.
They also see the need for both small and large-scale industries working together. It's about creating a diverse and resilient economy.
In a capitalist system, mechanization leads to unemployment. But in a collective system, it can free people from unnecessary labor, giving them more time for other pursuits.
They believe that with the right social structure, science can truly benefit humanity.
And they acknowledge the problems of urban life. They advocate for creating opportunities in villages, bringing the educated back to rural areas to create a more balanced society.
Now, regarding women, they call out sex discrimination as another form of injustice. The idea that women are inferior is still prevalent.
They highlight how women have been denied basic rights throughout history.
Ananda Marga, in contrast, promotes complete equality between men and women in all areas of life.
They acknowledge physical differences but emphasize that women are equal in value. Selfish men have exploited those differences to control women.
They detail how men have systematically oppressed women in all aspects of life.
And they argue that true progress is impossible if half the population is held back.
Both men and women need spiritual development, which is impossible with inequality.
They criticize the idea that a few women in power means equality. We need a complete change in the system, starting with education.
They emphasize that true progress for women requires much more than token representation.
Like in a biological organism, all parts need to work together. Society needs cooperation between equals, not dominance.
And they conclude that global well-being is impossible without improving the lives of women. It's like a bird needing both wings to fly.
Now let's look at morality. They say morality is the base of spiritual practice, but not the end goal. A moralist's ideal is limited compared to the mental equilibrium a spiritual aspirant seeks.
Just being truthful and harmless isn't enough. True morality is a constant struggle, striving to live a balanced life, overcoming negative forces.
And external morality can break down under pressure. Temptation reveals the weakness within. Morality is a starting point, not the destination.
The goal is to eliminate the very tendencies towards negativity, to achieve a state of oneness where those desires disappear.
We need to actively purify our minds, removing negative influences both inside and outside.
Selflessness and universalism are the antidotes to mental impurity. By cultivating opposite virtues and serving humanity, we purify our minds.
So morality is the base, spiritual practice is the means, and divine life is the goal.
But they also see a problem. Immorality often thrives, discouraging those who are trying to be good, so moralists need to unite and fight against it.
Meditation alone is not enough. We need to develop inner strength and then use it to oppose injustice in the world.
Now let's talk about human value. They see a problem where social value, based on things like wealth and status, is prioritized over the inherent worth of every individual. Sadvipras aim to change that.
They believe social value should come from recognizing the divinity in each person. We need to create an environment where everyone can thrive physically, mentally, and spiritually.
It's everyone's birthright to develop in all those aspects.
They warn against hating or underestimating anyone. Those who are marginalized might have achieved great things if they were given the right support.
Sadvipras see the potential in everyone. They understand that negative tendencies often come from lack of guidance and opportunity.
All our actions should be based on the principle that human beings are divine children.
But while everyone has inherent human value, social responsibility should only be given to those who are morally fit.
They criticize the system where wealth equals worth. It reduces people to tools for making money and ignores the value of human life.
We need to move away from that self-centeredness and lack of compassion.